Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. From time to time on the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, I have been given to some listicles, if you will, listing out more often than not with respect to movies, the best science fiction movies, the best Western movies, the best movies in general, the best sports movies, the best Christmas movies. Well, there's one movie that makes it, that wins the best Christmas movie, that also, in my judgment, makes it into my list of the 5 best movies ever made. There's lots of good Christmas movies, but the best one of them all, in my judgment, is It's a Wonderful Life. I want you to take a step back. I mean, we can jump right into the story. We can remember the fun characters. We can remember the circumstances. But if we take a step back, what this is a story about a man who was living a life filled with blessing, and yet was filled with frustration and bitterness because he didn't see the blessing he was receiving. The whole point of the granting of the wish, I wish I'd never been born, of the journey that Clarence takes Jimmy Stewart on to see the world without him, is not so much to show Jimmy Stewart, look, you're important to these people. Their lives would be worse off without you, but rather to say to him, you have had a good, a fruitful, a worthwhile life. What you have done matters. The blessings that you have, your wife, your children, your friends, they matter. Don't, George Bailey, don't, in the midst of your hardship and your struggle, as you're worried about the bank examiner and this lost money, don't throw this all away. And don't lose sight of what you have. Now, I confess that this movie has been one of my favorite movies since the first time I saw it. I also confess that I didn't see it until I was in college. I guess it's a function of no cable television and living out in the boonies, but the only Christmas movie I could even name as a kid growing up would have been Miracle on 34th Street. I didn't know about White Christmas. I didn't know about The Bishop's Wife. I certainly didn't know about It's a Wonderful Life. And the first time I saw it, I was profoundly moved by it. However, how much more moving is it to me, having found myself in the same situation? Do you remember what he says? Do you remember what George says when he yells at his uncle about the lost money? Don't you know what this means? It means bankruptcy and prison and scandal. Have you ever found yourself staring down the barrel of that gun? Bankruptcy and scandal and prison. I have. And unlike George Bailey, who didn't lose the money, his uncle did, I put myself in that situation. When I woke up in a jail cell, 4 years ago, unable to recall the specifics of the night before, but knowing, by the way that I felt, the basic outline. I could also see right in front of me bankruptcy and scandal and prison. What do you do when that's what's facing you? Well, what you do, friends, is you remember that it's a wonderful life. You stop and you give thanks for what you have that can't be lost. I sat in that cell and I thought, I could end up in jail. I could end up bankrupt. I'm going to have scandal for sure. But I have peace with the living God. I'm not going to get a set of wings. I'm going to be welcomed into the presence of the living God. Whatever else happens between now and then, I can handle. I can manage. Not only because that promise is in front of me, but because in the midst of whatever else might happen, I have Jesus right here beside me right now. He doesn't need to send an angel to me. He is with me wherever I go. And He has designed my life in such a way that every moment of failure on my part simply drives me closer to Him. Even this, as wicked as I am, as frightened as my boys were, as shaken as my wife may be, even this is God's good hand in my life. I don't have to imagine being dead. I don't have to get a glimpse into a world without R.C. Sproul Jr. to know that I've had a wonderful life and that I'm having a wonderful life and that I will have a wonderful life and that I will spend eternity in heaven. And that whatever hardship I go through in the here and now is not worthy to be compared to the eternal weight of glory. You know, before I knew what was going to happen, I didn't have the experience that George Bailey had of all of those friends coming and bringing him contributions so that the money could be made up that was lost. But I did have this. I did have a wife standing beside me, holding my arm, looking up at me with love in her eyes. I did have 2 little boys that I put through this horrible hardship. who were eager to forgive me and to love me. That closing scene with all that celebration, with Zuzu in Bait George's hands, with Mary holding on to him, with George's brother making that toast to my big brother, George Bailey, the luckiest man in the world. That's what I am. I'm the luckiest man in the world. It is, friends, a deeply wonderful life. Now, I don't know what your circumstances are. I do know this. I do know that I don't think I'm obsessive compulsive about it, but I do like to be diligent to make sure that I'm providing a daily podcast 5 days a week, whatever else might be going on that day, even when I think my listenership is going to be peculiarly low on this day. I'm going to be quite surprised if there's very many of you who are spending a part of your Christmas day listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast. I don't begrudge that. In fact, I might argue that's probably a healthier thing to do, to not be listening. But if you are, I want to again today bring this same message. Jesus changes everything. Here I am, 4 years later, and my precious wife, she still loves me. She still puts her arms around me. She still looks up at me with tenderness. She still believes in me. Our boys, they still love me. And they have since that day grown and matured in ways I couldn't possibly have imagined. They've become dignified young men. And I'm not in prison. I never went to prison. I was given a suspended sentence. I was put on probation. And through that process, lots of good things came to pass. But not only am I not in prison, I'm in front of this microphone. I get to do what I love to do. Now, before this happened, I got to travel the world telling people about Jesus. I got to go to Colombia and to Brazil and to Mexico. I got to go to Indonesia and to Korea and to Japan and to China. I got to go to Ireland and to Scotland and to England. I don't have that. My speaking calendar is virtually empty, except for this venue, the one where I get to speak about Jesus to people in Colombia and Brazil, in Indonesia and Korea and Japan and China, in Ethiopia and Kenya and Zambia. And I get to do it all while I stay home with my family who loves me. It is a wonderful, wonderful life. I won't have as many stickers on my suitcase like George wanted to have. I'm not a frequent flyer anymore. Don't get free upgrades. But that's okay because I don't need free upgrades because I'm not flying anywhere. I get to be home. And I get to preach about Jesus. It is a wonderful life. And I thank you for the part that you play in it. I thank you first for simply being listening ears. If I were speaking to the wall, this would not satisfy me. But having people willing to listen means so much to me. I thank you for those who not only listen, but listen with joy and with expectation, who listen with the expectation that maybe they're going to be helped, who listen with the purpose of becoming more like Jesus. Hey, you're the blessing that says what I'm doing has meaning. I want to thank also those who speak words of kindness, words of encouragement. I want to thank Steve Hoskins. Steve Hoskins, every now and again, not every week, but every now and again, I get a message from him saying, hey, I read this book you told me to read. Or, hey, I'd already read that book and this is what I thought. Just like I ask. I'm grateful for all of that. And I am also grateful for those of you who in the past year have saw fit in the midst of economic uncertainty to financially come alongside us and support the work of Dunamis Fellowship, including the work of this podcast, Jesus Changes Everything. I know who you are. I know you're out there, Dave. I miss seeing you. I know you're out there, Jason. And I miss seeing you. I know you're out there driving somewhere, Bill. And I miss seeing you. But I'm grateful for every one of you. And those of you who have determined to come alongside and to give every month to the work of Dunamis Fellowship, I'm also grateful to you. You're the ones, more than anything, who put wind in my sail, who help me to know that we're not spinning our wheels and we're not wasting our time, and who make it all possible. You're the ones who make it possible for us to be a blessing to everyone else that I've already listed. Do you know that? You're George Bailey. In the world of Jesus changes everything. You make this life happen. As is my habit, I'm asking for more of you to move into that last group. will you please consider monthly support for the work of Dunamis Fellowship, for the work of Jesus Changes Everything, the podcast. It's not complicated. You go to rcsproulJR.com. You click on the donate button. There's a way there to give a one-time gift. There's a way there to give a monthly gift. Not complicated at all. If that's too complicated for you, send me a message. I'll send you our address and you can mail in a check. But in the meantime, I want you to know that I'm a blessed man, that I'm blessed by you, whatever category you come in. And I'm asking that God would bless you today and in the coming year. You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com and join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.